Are you curious what are the worst money mistakes new creators make and what are the best investments for your YouTube business? Well, in this interview with Philip and Julia of 2Cents, we talk about just that. On their channel, they give financial advice on topics from investing in stocks and real estate, good and bad debt, and what are the best money strategies for creators so you can make the most sense of your finances to be successful. All that and more on the VI show coming up.
YouTube Secrets is out now. Learn the strategies of today's top video influencers in this step-by-step YouTube success playbook. Get your copy today at tubesecretsbook.com.
Welcome to Video Influencers. My name is Benji Travis, and this is the VI show. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We help you build your influence, income, and impact with online videos. Sean and I, we started this channel to help you crush it on YouTube, and we're the co-authors of YouTube Secrets, so make sure you pick up a copy down below. I'm excited to get into the interview today because our guests are going to help you with your finances. They're going to talk about some of the mistakes people make. So without further ado, Julia, Philip, thank you so much for being on the show today.
What's up? Hey, Benji.
And of course, you saw what their channel's all about. One of the things I love about Julia and Philip is they come from a background of being artists themselves, being creators, and of course, they've got their YouTube channel. But they also are experts when it comes to giving financial advice. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Real quickly, Julia and Philip, why don't you take a second to talk about your background outside of what we know about your YouTube channel? Because I think it's really unique to our audience because you were artists when you first starting out, working.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try and make it as nutshell an explanation as possible, because really it's been a 13-year journey. I mean, we've been married for 13 years and through that time have just changed how we go through life, and especially how we deal with our money. So we met in college. We were both theater kids, both at the University of Texas at Austin, in the theater school, and we got married real quick. So while our families were, emotionally supportive, they were like, okay, if you're going to get married at 20 years old, you got to do this yourself. So we're on our own, financially speaking, pretty early. And we started to try and figure things out for ourselves. And we didn't really have much financial education. Like, all I remember from my parents teaching me about money is like, credit cards are bad.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now what? That's about what I got. And so it was really kind of an very organic experience building our financial education. A lot of it was kind of accidental. He stumbled on Dave Ramsey one day, just clicking through the radio, and was like, this is kind of interesting. And started to nerd out a little bit on things. I started a business as like a personal organizer, and like kind of out of nowhere, we were trying to cobble together a life in Austin, theater gigs and booking a commercial here and there and being a teacher and working at a bridesmaid store, and then a big transition happened around, like 9 years ago. We each ended up in the financial industry. He was recruited as a financial advisor in like your regular old big box brokerage firm. And I ended up as a mortgage loan officer.
Mm-hmm.
So weird, but it happened. And we both were sort of plunged into this world that we had no context for. And we just we're either going to sink or we are going to swim. And we learned a lot in a really short amount of time. And we decided one day, we're like, we have what it takes to try and change some of the ills that come along with this business, and really teach people how to be at peace with their money, And that's what we wanted to do. So we started our business, and then we started just making our own videos because we wanted people to have a sense of who we were before they came in as a client, get a sense of what our philosophies were, how we interact with people. Like, we're kind of animated and touchy-feely. We're not like, your little calculator with, the abacus. Like, that's not us. And you need to be cool with that before you come in. And then someone saw that video, was like, hey, these guys maybe have potential. They were working on another digital studios PBS show online. And they thought, hey, what if we pitched an idea to PBS for a financial channel? And we were like, hell yeah, that sounds awesome. So, and now here we are about, 5 years into our financial business journey and almost 2 years being YouTubers, I guess you could call us.
Well, what I love, I just showed your channel here on the screen. What I love is I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. They didn't really get taught a lot of financial, principles when they were young. They have to figure it all out. I think a lot of people, to one degree or not, can relate to that experience. And even up to now, and I think a lot of YouTubers, they're great at creating content. They just might not know as much about money. And this is why it's so important to us. Like our catchphrase, we talk about growing your influence and income, right? It's not just about growing your influence. You've got to pay your bills. You've got to take care of your family. And so this is why I love your channel and your experience. And I love that you had this eclectic experience throughout the last decade, both of you, because then you guys can relate to different types of professions. And so if you guys get a chance after this interview, definitely go check it out. But let's just start right there in terms of creators, people starting out as an entrepreneur. If you're starting a YouTube channel, you're an entrepreneur, because even if you're not in it for the money, it takes money to make better content, whether it's get better equipment, right? Or to be able to travel somebody, and there's expenses involved in creating this content. So let's start there. Philip, what are your general thoughts when people are first starting out as an artist, as a creator, as a YouTuber? What are some of the mistakes that you see people making when it comes to finances that they might not even know they're making?
Boy, so many. So we've been kind of giving this advice for a number of years now. I've kind of been seeing all kinds of entrepreneurs from small to big for probably 10 years now. And so I can kind of speak a little bit to mistakes we've made and mistakes we've seen people make, and then what they've done right. I would say probably the biggest mistake I felt pressure to make, and I've seen a lot of other people struggle with, is trying to, get to the level of the people they're seeing or trying to emulate really fast.
Oh, yeah.
You see, they see your channel, they see Gary Vaynerchuk, they see somebody who has decades of hard knocks and mistakes and this journey, right, to hit this level of success. And it's like, I need to look like them. I need my equipment to be like theirs. I need editing like them. And you can get in trouble real fast if you don't play in the minor leagues first and kind of, really kind of get your feet under you. And the people that we see that avoid this trap and don't think I have to buy a $10,000 camera. I need, the best video editing software, and I got to put a card. If you that and be okay being small and okay being a little scrappy, and you kind of learn to do some stuff yourself and get an entry level, couple $100 piece of gear here and there. You fail small instead of failing big. And when you fail small, you can kind of recover real quick and come back up real again. So I would say kind of like, be okay to kind of play around a little small. There's no shame in that. Almost everybody you admire probably did that, unless they got handed something on a silver platter, which doesn't happen that much.
I would add to that. I would say one of the biggest mistakes I find that small business people of really any stripe make is they immediately enmesh their business expenses and their business revenue with their personal bank account.
Oh,
hell no, do not do that. You have to immediately, as soon as you can, open up a completely bank account where all of the revenue that you might make and all of the expenses you might have to that business come out of. Even if at first you are acting as the investor into this business and you have to move some of your personal finances into this as a seed fund, right? That's perfectly acceptable. But what happens is people think, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to start making some income, and then their personal cash that they have made in some other manner becomes the slush fund for the business. And things are very muddy. It's very unclear how profitable their business is, what they're spending, not to mention come tax time. It's a nightmare.
Yeah,
so, like,
for sure.
Two completely separate financial worlds immediately.
So for the first 3 or 4 businesses we had ever started, we were guilty of this. We were like, we're not making enough money on this to really bother opening up a business account or whatever. And it became so hard to budget, so hard to track our profitability, if we even had any. The business just had a blank check into our personal finances, and it's chaos. It's so stressful. So it's like one of the very, very, very first things we tell people to do if they have a small business when they come to us is you got to separate those two immediately.
Yeah, I love that advice because I didn't even think about that in terms of sharing it with somebody who's just starting. But it is so important because part of understanding if you're getting more successful is proper bookkeeping, right? How much are you putting into the business? How much are you making? And if you mix it with everyday expenses, especially if you've got a family, if you've got a lot of different bills, it's hard to keep track of all that. I think that is great tip. And it's fairly easy. You know, it doesn't cost that much. And
I mean,
go ahead.
The one of the big benefits I find is that if you don't do this, you can have a business that's basically making no money for years. Family members, friends, ourselves, you're basically working at a really, really challenging, unfun hobby for no money, and you can't tell. It's just a shell game of it looks like money's coming in. I guess I'm okay, but you're not tracking your expenses all that closely, and so you basically can find out really quickly of like, hey, have I just been like sucking a bunch of time into something that is making me no money and I never realized it? This can help you figure that out pretty quickly.
And I think, like, just again coming back to this, how important it is. I think it has a mental shift attached, a very, very important one that says, now I'm a business owner, right? Now, like, you would never expect the owner of a grocery store to be buying bananas out of their personal account. Like, of course not. That's ridiculous. So, like, being able just to start to remove you as an individual person from the business, I mean, that's like mental health implication, like all that you can do to try and start to make a different world. And that, I think that can be harder, especially for like YouTube personalities. We think like, well, I am the business. And that's, I mean, you probably know that can lead to not good places.
I know you know this, Benji, but so many people starting out, this is kind of a light bulb moment of like, I kind of need 2 hats. I need the kind of like my personal life hat, and then like also my CEO or CFO hat. And I need to kind of know which one I'm wearing when I'm making decisions and when I look at different bank accounts. Gosh, that's just such a big help and so easy. Like you said, it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, no. And, you know, another thing you mentioned way earlier is don't try to emulate or don't try to replicate other YouTubers right out the bat, or other creators or other channels. You don't even know what's going on. You don't know what kind of budget they have, what kind of resources. You don't know that. I mean, like this studio, I mean, you can't see, but it's a pretty big studio. And to try to, number one, to replicate it right off the bat if you have no experience and very budget would be very difficult. And I always say just start with what you have, right? With a phone. And these days, these phones do HD quality. The microphone, plenty good. And I think that was the next question I have for you. I mean, like, I would love your comments on what I just mentioned. But some people, they try to do that with debt, right? Like getting a credit card or getting a loan. And personally, I'm like, start slow, gradually build up. But especially in this day and age when people are getting these crazy big loans. And I was watching this movie yesterday with my wife, and they were talking about startups. Actually, it was The Office. And Jim of The Office, he was in this startup. And the building that they had in the office looked so grand, and they were in their 3rd week. And I was telling my wife, like, how how is that even a thing that people would assume to take on that much debt? I don't know if they got an angel investor, but still, like, that's not necessary. But I would like to hear your thoughts, because I'm sure you've met a lot of people and yourselves experience this, thinking that you need this grand office or all this equipment to get started, and then also flirting with the idea of debt.
Ooh. Well, I'll start and just by saying, like, addressing this kind of startup culture sort of thing. And, you know, we live in Austin, Texas, which is like, hello, startup central. You know, things live and die here like that. But there's something to be said about the dangers of success theater.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are spending the money for that theater, right?
Performing success.
And doing that is expensive. I mean, it can be, right? Like,
got the BMW, got the watch, got the...
Exactly. And like, ultimately, a business makes money because they bring value.
Yeah.
They bring value. And like, if you're focused on the bells and whistles and not the core value that you are bringing to your audience, to your client, to anybody, it is doomed. It will eventually die. You just don't know when. You know, and like, I think of using debt or using like, you know, like these big, you know, rounds of capital injections that you put into like these businesses. It's like injecting steroids into like an infant. It's like, I don't think that's probably going to be good in the long term, because you're not forcing that business to walk on its own two legs at the beginning. It can't grow in a natural way. And unless you're trying to like do something really large where your entire business is based solely on volume, that's really the only scenario where I could understand, you know, it financially making sense to do something like that. But even then, you have to be very careful.
I would say 99%, maybe even 100. I'll say 99 because maybe there's something I'm forgetting. But virtually every small business, if it's just a dream in someone's mind or it's a few years into the creation of it, really has no business, at least the ones I've ever experienced, has no business taking out big loans or needing huge injections of capital. There are exceptions, of course, to every rule, but most of the time, the vast majority of the time, you can do what you want just on the smaller scale.
Exactly.
But it's not like I have to take out this huge amount of debt or I have to give away a huge amount of ownership in the form of equity so that I can do this, or nothing. There's nearly always just a smaller version that you can do first. So just like you said, Benji, start with what you have. Oh my gosh, the people we've seen that have just like smashed it with success. We've had some clients over the years that just are level of success I don't know if we'll ever touch, right? They're just so, because we get to see the intimate kind of nitty gritty of their real finances. And without an exception, they started in such an unglamorous kind of garage equivalent, no money, you know, use a little bit of their own savings
it like
account.
That for years.
They looked so much less successful than they were for a long time. It's usually like 10 years plus into their success. Yeah. Actually start to have some trappings of it. And, you know, I think there's actually something really, to me, attractive and powerful about underrepresenting your success. Like, I don't need to show how successful I am. And the most successful people we've worked with, you'd never know it. Look, the people who have really flashy and have this kind of like mentality of like, I got to go big and I'm going to get huge injections of capital and big business loans and that kind of stuff.
It's hollow.
Yeah, they have to be pretty unhealthy businesses. At least it's very, very stressful for the owners, and it's so risky that, you know, it's the type of thing where if you fail small, you can get right back up. But if you fail really, really big with some of these things, you just don't get another chance. You know, you're bankrupt, your credit's destroyed, or whatever. You have to more. I've been hearing with this coronavirus. I just heard it the other day of somebody who launched a restaurant in New Orleans, and the backing capital was their house. And now the restaurant is closed because they can't open it.
so hard.
So risky, and you just never think that'll happen to you. It probably will. Like weird, risky, crazy things happen to every business. You just cannot possibly predict till you get there. And gosh, what a perfect example what we're living through now. Yeah.
Yeah, and it reminds me of when Sean and I, he's a co-founder of this channel. When we first started, it was right after Sean and I basically lost everything. So we were just the perfect team of like very minimal resources. And I want to show you something. So like, let's pull up my screen here. One of our first videos right here, how to name your YouTube channel. I just want you to know, this is not a nice studio. This is a meeting room in the real estate office I used to work at. I didn't even tell them what I was doing. I just said, hey, I'm just going to reserve this room. I remember agents walking by and looking at Sean and I while we brought like a guy to bring one of Sean's cameras in there and tape this. But that's not the only frugalness that we had. Another video here, right here. This is in Sean's mom's house. So again, like weird, and like we got the weird fish painting in the background. I love his mom, but like not really the ideal like vibe or whatever. But we're hustling, like, and we set up these two little tables in front of us with all the gear that we could muster up. And again, so the reason I'm sharing that is because, I mean, I totally understand that you want to replicate a certain look, and you can bring it back to me now. But it is so important to realize that the things to focus on when starting a YouTube channel is the content, right? But it's the context, it's the value within that content, and it doesn't always have to be this major production. But watch a few videos, you can learn about lighting. You know, both of those videos, we were utilizing natural lighting, so we didn't have to have anything crazy. Secondly, I mean, cameras now, that was like 5-6 years ago. The cameras now are just amazing, but you grow into it, right? And I believe debt can be one of the number one killers, because if you've got a bill to pay, or you're worried about your next loan payment due, it might determine your actions. If you're starting a YouTube channel, you need to be focused on creating as much content, adding as much value. However, with that being said, now I'm not one that's ever taken out any debt. Is there ever a good time to take out debt? What kind of debt? And what are the things that you would suggest to people to invest in with that debt if they had to, right? Like if they wanted to, or like say they had a credit card and they had like $1,000. Is there ever a time it makes sense? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Ooh, I'd really have to scratch my head on that.
I will say, we're, philosophically, we're generally anti-debt too. Kind of like my kind of mindset of it is, it's like trying to do whatever you're going to do, plus let's also play Russian roulette at the same time. Like,
exactly.
Odds are it'll probably be okay, but why do that if you don't need to? Yeah. So we're like, it's a totally unnecessary risk to possibly fast track this thing, but also kill it. Just not. So we've not taken on any debt at all for the business, and so grateful for that. But is there ever a time, we just kind of unpacked this concept of good debt versus bad debt in an episode a couple weeks ago. And we, traditionally a good debt, quote unquote, is a debt used to buy something that is very likely to go up in value without anything exceptional happening, right? So, when we were talking earlier, Benji, you said like taking out debt to maybe buy a guitar so that you can become a successful musician. I don't know, whatever, become some sort of rock star and make money doing that. Could that happen? Sure. But that would be exceptional. That would be unusual, because most people who buy a guitar, including me, make no money doing it, right? It's just an expense. It's just a loss. It's just, it's not a investment. And so I would say if there's any exception in our world, it would be real estate, and it would be real estate that you can put a substantial amount down on. Yeah. Kind of like 0% down real estate, I think, is kind of the same sort of Russian roulette. And even that we don't love. If there was a possibility to just buy it outright or put most of the money down, probably would. But that's really the one exception. I would never recommend, for someone asking my advice, I would never say you should take out a debt to do this investment thing, or to build a business.
Yeah.
You want this nice camera? save up for it. You want to hire somebody, have the cash flow to support it. You're just kind of speeding things up with debt, but you're also introducing a huge amount of extra risk that we're not big fans of.
And, you know, I will say I could understand a scenario where like you're, you know, let's say you have a YouTube channel, this one camera, and you just don't have the funds to, you know, replace it. And like, this is your income. Like, okay, like there's nuance here, but again, it comes with risk, right? And another, I think that ties into another concept that we also talk about a lot with small business people that everyone skips. That is important. It is a mistake people make, is that their first order of business when money starts coming in the door is they pay it to themselves instead of keeping it in that business for reserves for that business, so that if something essential breaks, you can use that, not have to turn to debt. Like basically building an emergency fund in your business is probably the second most important thing.
It's not very sexy.
No, it's not sexy. It's so lame.
If you can do this one unsexy step in your business, debt doesn't really come into the equation anymore.
Yeah.
If I do that, I could buy it. Like, why pay interest?
Exactly.
Yeah, my parents, I was lucky because they actually taught me about finances very early on, how to save money. And so that was built into me. Part of savings is to prepare for a rainy day. And we got plenty of those here in Seattle, but it's always been the thing I lean on. And in fact, especially with the world, with the economic crisis and the bailout this government has shared, basically bailing out everyone, right? As many people as possible wouldn't be as necessary if people had savings. And I agree, it's not as sexy, but somebody made a comment I think is good to reference or to acknowledge. And Dave B says, this is a very privileged perspective. What about people who can't afford to live without debt? Never mind for starting a business. And the reason I bring it up is because I've seen in your videos that you guys acknowledge that there are people that are legit, and I'm not saying this about you, Dave B. I don't know where you're at, but there are legit people that are poor, that literally the fees at their bank can like create even more poverty for them. They can't afford to go like deposit a check at a regular bank because they don't have a bank account. I mean, there's so many things that we take for granted, and I think that is something to consider. The one thing I will say to that though is in reference to starting a YouTube business. Almost everything you need is available to you as long as you've got this. Okay, this is going to be the most expensive thing, but you can get free phones. I believe a lot of cell phone companies, you can get free phones with a camera on it. And like education is a great example. I saw in one of your videos you bring up Robert Kiyosaki. He's always talking about good debt, right? Use debt to your advantage, even though maybe he's had bankruptcy in his history. And also the dirty little secret, I think, and you guys acknowledge it, is he's talking about debt so that he kind of positions his sales pitch so that you use debt to get his education programs or to work with the companies he's partnered up with. Any thoughts there? Because I want to acknowledge there is people that like live in a world where they absolutely need it, and I've got my own beliefs in that, but anything you'd want to respond with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will say that there are deeply systemic issues in how this world, and in particular America, because that is where we live, that has set it up so that people are trapped. I absolutely believe that, and I know that. And like teaching them how to budget, that's not going to fix the systemic, issues that lie behind racial inequity, poverty. Like these are huge, huge issues, and one that our channel is not built to fix.
For
right?
sure,
like, it's just not. Our expertise lies in making the most of what does come to you. It does not lie in creating a better system. I try and do that in my own personal life and how I vote and how I, just go about my life. But, I I do think that it's really important to acknowledge that that is the truth. Do I feel like I can change that? No, I wish I could.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying in my own little ways that are possible, that are available to me to address that happens, that exists, that is valid, and that this channel and like these things aren't really there to address that.
Yeah. So, I mean, my kind of take on that is, I mean, number one, we are coming from a place of enormous, countless privileges.
Enormous privilege.
The fact that we can create this show, I think even being able to watch this show is
to be in the industry that we are has everything to do with the privilege that we
have a
inherited.
huge amount of. I mean, we have a huge amount of privileges stacked in our favor. 100%. With that said, and the one of the critiques we lobbed at the sort of anti-debt Dave Ramsey camp, kind of the most intense anti-debt stance of all, which is you should never have debt with the exception of maybe a home mortgage. It's always bad and there's no place for it ever. One of the critiques we said is a lot of people don't have a choice. I mean, it's literally between go into debt or like don't feed your family.
Yeah, like that's not valid.
That's a huge systemic problem, and we don't think it's right that sort of the intense anti-debtors attack change. You don't have a lot of
it has kind of a lot of bootstrappy, you can fix everything yourself.
Just have the right attitude and you can fix everything. We don't believe that that's true. But I think the context of what you were asking, Benji, is like you're wanting to start a business, you're an entrepreneur, and you're trying to think about, should I go into debt to take this course? Should I go into debt to buy this equipment? Should I go into debt to get this office? And usually you do have a choice to do that kind of stuff. Not always, but a lot of the times it's like going into business for yourself is something you're choosing because you want to make your life better, not because you have no choices at all. And even though you still can do that, our advice is to look at, is there any possible way that you can slowly save up into that? And maybe 1% of the time the answer is no, but most of the time the answer is yes.
Or like, it's not black and white, debt or no debt. Maybe less debt is better, right? Like even if you can afford to pay for half of it, that's better. Like there's a spectrum here.
That's something we've really learned from listening to the show, and all the feedback and positive and negative we get is this is nuanced. There's no nevers. There's no alwayses. It really depends so much on the context. And we recognize that it is complicated. And that's why I didn't want to say you never have debt, because like that's assuming a lot about you. We're just sharing our philosophy and how we run our business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By the way,
personal.
By the way, when I referenced that comment, I wasn't trying to make any judgment towards you. I just thought it's something I want to acknowledge, because even me, I mean, so when I first got started on YouTube, my wife was already an established creator, right? So I had that to my advantage. We already had some gear, but I think that the reason I want to acknowledge it, not just to reference those people in those positions where they feel like it, but I'll tell you this. A lot of people feel they need debt because they have a lifestyle that's too expensive. It's above their means. Secondly, they might live in a place. The reason Austin is one of the new startup capitals of America is because Silicon Valley was way too expensive, right? Texas was way cheaper, better taxes for people. One of the number one solutions to people avoiding debt, it just moves somewhere that's going to be less expensive. And again, that is very privileged. If maybe you don't live in this country, or you live in a place, or maybe you have to stay put, but where can you save money, right? Like I'd say the number one thing is cut all the expensive that you don't absolutely need. If you really want to make this YouTube thing work, you've got to be super focused, be very clear about what your priorities are, because a lot of people start YouTube channels because they are passionate about something, or they got experience or some kind of skill they want to share. But some people, it's like, this is the only thing left. So if that's the case, put everything into this. Like you got to, and that's the case for any business. Starving artists, usually the ones that become famous or do something with life, they're like, you know what, forget everything else. I'm not going out with my buddies. I'm not going to buy all this other stuff. I'm eating ramen for the next 2 years of my life. I wouldn't recommend that, by the way. And they're just super focused. And I think just like a content creator on YouTube or a YouTuber, they're just thinking about videos. They're thinking about the value. If you've got that kind of mindset and you're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, I don't think debt is something necessary. In fact, if you've got that mindset for yourself and say you can't make it work for your circumstance, if you have that kind of work ethic and you're delivering that value for your own channel, but maybe you have to get a part-time job, I'm telling you that hustle is going to be noticed by somebody. And I'll tell you, as a businessman, if there is somebody with that kind of an aggressive spirit and they're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, but maybe they got a part-time job with me, I'm going to help them out. Like, I'm like, even if it wasn't going to benefit my business, there are people like that in the world. I don't believe that's the case just in the United States. I believe it's across the globe. You just got to find those people. And so that's still not necessarily going to answer your question, Dave B. And I just see that you just responded, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of hope, because I've literally been in a place where I had $0 in my account. And Philip and Julia, I think from your background, you can, I don't know about zero, but you can definitely relate to like not having a lot of options. And don't discount hard work and focus and discipline and patience and consistency and living beneath. I call the first year that I moved out of my house from my parents my chicken and rice days, because literally that's all I could afford. I got the big pack of chicken, and rice is next to nothing. Okay, you can make, that's why a lot of Asian people eat it, because it's a way to cut your meals, right? So you can fill yourself up with less meat. I mean, like almost all Asian like cuisine is based off of this principle of extending everything. Noodles, rice dishes, it's all about that. So I can speak to that, but that's the kind of mindset I would have, and I have had and I've seen in other successful people. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of people for like 10 years, you don't even know that they're a successful person. So sorry I went on that long rant, but I just had to put that out there.
Well, and like those things that you're talking about of like focus, long hours, hard work, that's in essence like sweat equity, right?
Yes.
So like in a real estate sense, there are things that you can do that don't cost you dollars wise very much, that you can do to improve the value of this home. The same thing applies with your business. That isn't a tangible thing, right? Sweat equity, focus, that sort of thing. And that can absolutely increase the potential value of your business. And I'll also say, like, the way we approached opening this business, specifically this business being our financial planning firm that we've had now for 5 years, we didn't do it with debt. But the way we sacrificed is that I kept my job. Yeah. I kept a job that was so stressful and intensely draining and taxing on me. And I stayed there until we had a fully funded business emergency fund and it could afford to bring me over. Like, nice. It wasn't, like, our approach wasn't like, you know what, I'm just leaving, we're doing ramen. Like, I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'm okay with this kind of sacrifice. Like, sacrifice can look a lot of different ways. I just kind of want to say that. Like, it doesn't always look like ramen. Sometimes it means keeping that job that you just don't like and working every, like keeping your ability to like dine out once in a while and working, on the weekends and at night. Like, that's another form of sacrifice. It can look a lot of different ways.
For sure. I love that you just shared that part of your life, because I'd say the last thing, and Philip did actually respond, and he said, Philip and Julia, thanks for your answer and for acknowledging how privilege can impact the answer. I agree that many privileged people leverage debt in a risky way. So the last thing I'll say on this is, you're going to waste your time thinking about why someone else is successful and what resources they have, because again, you don't know anything about their life, especially YouTube and social media. Like, you only present like whatever you want people to see, and
I
you,
can talk about that for 3 hours.
yeah, you literally just gave that perspective, right? Like, by the way, I'm not saying that you came from like a third world country or anything. I'm like, but you had to struggle, right? You had to earn that ability to do what you do right now. And the perspective that's important is like, what do you have? And what can you offer to the world, and start right there. I use this analogy all the time because I'm a gardener. I love gardening and growing plants. And my kids and I, we planted seeds for the first time. Normally we get like what's called a starter, and it's just like this big, and you put it in the ground, and then they do all the hard work at the nursery. But I'm like, hey, let's start it from a seed this year. A tomato seed is so dinky. It's so tiny, right? We planted that thing, and like out of nowhere, like in 2 days, it sprouted up. And then within like a week or two, like it was pretty cool. I was like impressed. I was like, wow, we did that, right? And then I transferred it to our little greenhouse, and it got to like, I don't know, like 4 to 6 inches. And now, like 4 months later, I'm not kidding you, those tomato plants started from a seed are about 8 or 9 feet tall. I will probably get them to about 14 feet. Now, I'm not saying this to impress anybody or to, like show off my plants. The point is, it started from this tiny little seed. And that is how life is, I believe. And if you have nothing, almost be proud of it, because you only have up left to go, right? And that is just how so many success stories, a lot of privileged people, I believe, are privileged because somebody in their background, in their history, their family's history, started from that seed, and they grew the 14-foot plant, and they're like, hey, we want our kids to have a head start. Nothing wrong with that. I have no judgment. In fact, there's plenty of kids like that, right? But I don't like spend time going, man, I wish that was my life. I think about, okay, I'm a seed right now. What do I need to get this thing to sprout? And then you go little by little. The one other thing I want to point out too, that seed sprouted way quicker than I ever thought it would. And that's the thing about hustle and effort and just like complete grit in anything you do. Like, things will come to you. And that mindset is so important, because most people, they don't even see the seed, right? They just look at the other plant and go, man, if I had that, I would be able to do that too. And I'm not discounting your comment, Dave B, or anybody in a unprivileged a place. I just want you to know that I have been in a place like that, and there have been very successful people that started just like that. And it was that motivated them, that gave them the energy to make the right decision. And this is why, by the way, segue back to your channel and give you guys a second to kind of like talk about your thoughts. This is why a channel like yours gives people hope, right? Like, it teaches basic finances, because that's the beginning of starting a business. That's the beginning of that business turning into a corporation or something bigger. It starts with those basics. And that's a huge rant, but that's my thoughts.
I could have given the same rant, to kind of keep going with your metaphor here. I think in the age of social media we live in, all we see is the 14-foot tomato plant that's already just busting, just the best ever, right? And we're like, boy, I feel like I should have that. I feel like when I start my business, like in a year, I should be there. And we're not really talking so much of debt as kind of like your last only option. I think that's a different conversation. We're more really talking about, if you're using debt to shortcut and like to kind of skip the hard part and get to the cool part.
Yeah.
We just don't suggest that, because it doesn't really work out the way you think it will.
Because ultimately that cool part that you're trying to get to, it will be built on a foundation of sand. That is essentially, and you just better hope that nothing comes along and shakes the ground, because it's far more likely. Like cash is always a more solid foundation.
I love those pictures that you just shared of you at your mom's house and at your old job, your old job's conference room. Like, as a financial advisor, somebody who's seen so many people's finances over the years.
We get to see all the things that they wouldn't even show their parents.
That, like, to me, seeing stuff like that is a litmus test of like, oh, this is going to work. You're gonna make it, because you're not trying to cheat. You're willing to be scrappy, maybe not as sexy, maybe be a little bit more creative and work with what you got. It takes longer. I think great. And if you have that choice, if you have the choice to do that, which not everyone does, that's what you should do. You should do the slow, boring, less sexy, scrappy version with the ramen. And that actually is the recipe for success for the most people that we've seen.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, so we're going to get right to Q&A here in a second, but I want to ask some more questions. You guys hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel if you want to get more content just like that, But rapid fire, we're talking about some of the mistakes people make, some of the better investments. We're talking about good and bad debt, and basically our philosophies and principles that really trump some of those basic things that you can do for yourself. But real quickly, let's get through what are some of the biggest money drainers that you see people having? Like you said, you get to look into people's finances, and sometimes you just look at their bank account and you're like, wow, do you know that if you just save money here or like spent money a little bit differently here, that you would have a lot more at the end of the month, which would probably afford you the camera, right? Or by the end of the year, you could probably pay down some of this debt so that you're not so worried about it or get all these late fees. What are the quick fire things that you think of when it comes to a general purpose in finances that drain your account fast?
Okay, I mean, I'll go with the obvious answer, which is dining out.
Yeah.
I know it sucks, and I know like it's like such a trope now. It's like people, make fun of, especially millennials for going out so much. But the financial fact of it is that to get an ingredient on that plate, you have to pay for 4 other layers of things. You have to pay for the space, you have to pay for the labor, you have to pay for the service, you have to pay for a lot more that's on top of that piece of cauliflower. That you don't have to do that in, when you do it at home. So
prepared foods, number one. Everybody's shocked.
I know.
Everybody we look at it with, they're like, whoa, I didn't know it was that much. So that's an easy one. Number 2, I would say, is probably having too much house. A lot of people feel a ton of pressure to live in a certain neighborhood or a certain area, and it just strangles them.
Their car, that's a big
new cars,
one.
Expensive cars, luxury cars. We've never owned a new car. That was one of our kind of scrappy versions. We've always owned a car 5 years or older. I had a car that was 16 years old until last year. It drove. It was safe.
It was great.
It wasn't the sexiest thing in the world, but it worked. And gosh, people who are thinking about going to debt for a business, but they have a new car, I'm like, no, we have this backwards.
No. Yeah. I think the tricky thing with cars especially is that the biggest drain is completely invisible, and that's depreciation. You have no idea. You never see the depreciation. Your bank account does, but believe me, it is happening.
One we don't talk about quite as much, but actually I do see quite a bit is really big ongoing commitments for kids. So like private school, coaching, mentoring classes, none of which is bad. Hey, if you can afford that, no problem. But if you're struggling to make ends meet, or finances really stressed you out, or you can't invest in your dream business, and you've got these drains, it's so emotional. It's very, very, very hard to untangle. But they're my kids. I have to do everything for them. And that's such a hard kind of chicken and egg thing of people feel they're a bad person or a bad parent to not do everything they can possible for the kid, and they're sabotaging themselves and maybe even the kid in the long run by doing that.
And then, okay, I swear I'll be done after this. One more. Travel.
Oh, yeah.
It's a thing. And it is not, it is the new materialism. Everyone comes to me and says, we don't really care about stuff. We just care about travel. I'm like, well, the same dollars that used to buy stuff still buy travel, right? So, and you can't even sell it afterwards. And I'm not saying it's bad. Travel is my number one love. I absolutely adore it. But when people get in trouble when they're trying to do too many things. If you are opening a business, your resources, your time, your energy need to be focused on that. And you can't be trying to build this thing and trying to see the world at the same time and get peak travel experiences. You can get away. You can go somewhere really nice that doesn't cost you, an absolute arm and a leg. just focus for a short amount of
Focus.
time. Like it'll go a long way.
I think that is a great place to end in terms of those money mistakes or the drainers of your account. Is you got to stay focused. All those things you mentioned, new car, travel, even providing for your kids, all that will come in such a much bigger way if you get to that place. But if you're trying to do it all at once, it's just like if YouTube, everyone knows, if you watch our channel and you've seen our interviews, focus on that one channel. Okay. When you're first starting out, one niche, that is the topic. That's what you're going to be known for. And you just focus on that. If you try to start 5 channels, you're not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be an uphill battle. Same thing with finances. You know, if you have this crazy goal, this lifestyle you want to live, you know what? Just forego it for like 2, 3, 5 years, whatever it takes. Because when you get there and you have success, or you are able to have a business you open up, or sell this product, or have some kind of service because you were focused, you'll be able to buy way more cars, right? And I do believe this one thing I want to like get your last thoughts, and then we're going to go into Q&A. Is I do believe the rich get richer. And the opportunities for the privilege are just, it's crazy. But it's because, and I'm not saying it's for everybody, but it's because they're positioned in a way to be able to receive those. And they have a foundation, you know, they have savings so they can survive through the bad times. Right now, we're seeing so many families in these uncertain times. They don't know if they're going to be able to live in their house very long. This is why savings is so important versus somebody that is well off, right? That's got multiple bank accounts, multiple businesses, multiple streams of income. They're able to survive through this. And unfortunately, there's probably going to be less competition in business, right? Restaurants, for example, I feel for you if you're a restaurant owner, a mom pa shop, right? And that can't get through this like shutdown period because McDonald's, they're going to be fine. Like these bigger chains. And so this is why Sean and I, when we wrote this book and we talk about our catchphrase on YouTube Secrets, that income is important. And it starts with basics, but you want to get to a place where you're comfortable, not only to be able to take care of yourself and your family, but be able to do bigger things. Like you said, travel, like, and without having to think about like, do I have to put this on a credit card? Like pay cash, right? There's nothing better than that. And for sure, like cars, right when you roll off the lot, it loses value right away. And that's why buying used is important. But like, it would be nice to buy new, right? Like I've had a brand new car before, but make sure you're in a place where it's not going to hurt your business or hurt your family. And so this is why it's important to get to that place, but it starts with focus at the beginning. So with that being said, what are your last thoughts, Philip and Julia? And also tell us a little bit about your channel as well.
I think ending focus, like if that is like probably 75% of the work that I do on an individual basis, it's helping people focus better. That's all. It's just being an extra set of eyes, that's outside of the emotional zone of, your finances, to say like, hey, you guys came to me and you said these things were important to you. These things you want to focus on. I'm seeing other things happening. So let's just make sure if we're doing these other things that they're very intentional, right? And that everything is about intention. Like no individual expense is bad. I don't think people are bad with money. I think people just are. It's hard to prioritize sometimes, especially in a culture like this where stuff is thrown at you constantly to say, you should prioritize this, you should prioritize this, you should prioritize that. We get so much mixed messages. And so it's really important to have some like alone time, get some therapy to help you hone in on what makes you happy, not what makes somebody else happy, what makes you happy. And to create a life focused on getting more of that.
Yeah, so many people spend money and so many of their expenses revolve around what the image they're portraying is, and it has really nothing to do with what they want or what's important to their family. And that's the last thing I'll say. Don't worry about what other people think, because they're going to judge you regardless, right? Especially on social media, people have bad days all the time, and they'll hate on you for the weirdest things. So, and it's funny, like I was looking up your video on the, I showed when you guys went out to restaurants, right? And another channel made a, like, this is a dumb advice video or whatever. I'm thinking like literally like something that's good advice somebody has to make, like, and that's the beauty of free speech, right? Anybody can say. So at the end of the day, you just have to be comfortable with what you believe in and focus on those principles, and then crush it. So, hey, if you guys got value out of this, hit that like button. If you want to check out their channel, make sure to go to 2Cents. And also, if you want to see our playlist for the best tips and tricks for starting a YouTube channel, make sure you check out that playlist as well.